Okay, confession time. And my son is sitting here with me and is probably going to get mad when he hears me say this, but growing up, I hated soccer. I thought it was a stupid sport. I thought it didn't make sense. I thought anybody could run up and down the field and kick a ball into a net. As a young reporter, I never had to cover soccer, and so my first real experience with soccer was at the third university I worked at, down at Missouri Southern. I started to learn a little bit more about the game and realized the intricacies and started to appreciate it a little bit. And then my son Grant became a player, and I became a coach, and I realized it's a beautiful game. It's different from other sports that we see here in the United States because the goal is to score as little as possible. Obviously, if you're on offense, you want to score as much, but you're going to see much more low-scoring soccer games, which means any scoring opportunity is exciting. Defense is at a premium, and it makes for a different style of game than we're used to seeing, and it becomes much more attractive. So before you begin covering soccer, you need to learn the basics. Number one, at the high school, college, professional level has their 45 minutes of a running clock, meaning the clock only stops for goals, for injuries, or if a yellow card or red card is being implemented. And the referee keeps the official time. So you'll see time on a scoreboard, but the official at the center referee keeps the official time. And he or she is the one who knows when there is stoppage play. So you may get to that end of 45 minutes, and that center referee will tell you we actually have 3 minutes of stoppage play, and you have 3 more minutes to play. Okay? So you need to learn the offside rule, which is a touchy subject. It's a rule that I cannot stand in soccer, but it is a rule that is paramount to the game. It is unique to the game, and it does make a lot of sense when you stop and think about it. So learn that rule. You need to recognize the variety of alignments and understand the alignments are numbered from the back going forward. So a 3-4-2, a 3-4-3, I gotta get my math right, would be 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, and 3 offensive players. A 4-4-2 would be 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, and 2 strikers. You don't count the goalkeeper in there or the goalie. Never call them the goaltender. You don't count them because you obviously are going to have one of those. Okay? A counterattack is when the defense steals the ball, goes the other direction. You need to learn what the different positions are. These are typically the defenders. You might have a special defender called a sweeper. You're going to have your midfielders. You might have outside midfielders, center mids. You might have offensive midfielders or defensive mids. You need to know what the striker is. Oftentimes they're called the wings. So learn what those positions are, what the skills are of each of those different positions, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what their main job is. You also need to recognize there are three types of free kicks for penalties: the direct, the indirect, and the penalty kick, and you need to know when each is going to be implemented. Restarts are going to happen in a variety of different ways, so get an idea of that, whether that's the ball being thrown in from inbounds, whether it's after a penalty, whether it's after a goal, or an injury. You also need to recognize the different types of fouls, learn about yellow cards and red cards and why those are utilized. Also recognize in soccer, stats really aren't that important. Only the real stats that we keep are goals, assists for offensive players, saves for goalkeepers. We will look at how many offsides there were. We will look at how many corner kicks there were. We'll look at how many cards were given. But really, there aren't a whole lot of stats beyond those. Only goalkeepers may use their hands, so keep that in mind. Now, if a ball hits off of a player's hand and that player isn't trying to stop it with their hand, they may be running the other way and it just happens to hit them, they'll let the ball go on. Referees may also call what's called advantage. So I might have a handball, but if it doesn't give my team the advantage, and by calling the handball you'd stop play where the other team has an advantage and is running to goal, then that would make the offensive team upset. So learn about those little intricacies. Do learn the overtime rules and when they're going to go to shootouts, when they're actually going to have an overtime, how long the overtimes are. And then also remember that FIFA is the international governing body of soccer. To get ready, you need to make sure you bring a notebook so you can take notes. Bring a stopwatch so you can try and keep track of stoppage play. I recommend a set of binoculars because the game happens quite a distance away from you, and it can be very difficult to track players, especially who had the assist. And then also bring a tape recorder so you can record notes for yourself as the game is going along, and so you can record your interviews afterward. Also record the starting lineups and substitutions during a game. There are specific substitution rules in high school, college, and professional soccer that apply. A player can sub in the first half, and the person they subbed for can come back in one time. But in the second half, if you sub out of the game, you're out of the game for good. So Keep track of those rules and those substitutions. Okay, as you watch the game, kind of try and determine how the game flows. Is it really being played a lot in one team's offensive half? Is it pretty balanced back and forth? Has it gotten to a slow pace and then all of a sudden bursts as a team tries to go for a goal? The Ginnies do a lot of this, where they'll play the ball back to their defenders and they'll just pass the ball back and forth, trying to draw the other team in from on the offensive side, trying to draw them in, and that opens up space, and then the defenders will launch long passes down the field. So you're looking for the flow. Describe the key plays. If a player had a great run but a defender came out of nowhere and took the ball away, that's a big play. If a player had a great opportunity for a goal and the goalkeeper made a great save, that's something to think about. If a player's on a breakaway and has a chance at a goal and they just shank it, those are things to look at. If you get a lot of those missed opportunities, that's critical in soccer because, again, you don't get a whole lot of opportunities to score. So as always, like I said, you're going to focus on the defensive play, focus on the field conditions, record any injuries that may take place. One thing that drives me crazy in soccer is you see players who will get fouled and they'll hit the ground and they look like they've got broken bones all over the place and they'll flop around on the field. What they're trying to do is draw a card on that other team, or they're trying to avoid a card on themselves. Don't see as much of this in the MLS as you see in international soccer, which is why I prefer the MLS, but it is something that happens. Determine the defensive strategy a coach uses. Do they try and bunch in the center and force teams wide so they have to do a lot of crossing into the middle where there's going to be a lot more bodies? Do they put a lot of pressure? Do they play man-to-man? Do they play more zone? Because those types of defenses do still work in soccer. Like I said, bring a stopwatch so you can determine stoppage play, because that can be critical. A team may think they have the game in hand. They really don't know how much time is left either until time runs out and the center referee tells them how much time is left in the game. And as you learn the game, start to diagram their scoring plays. And was it a player who maybe crossed it from the right side, crossed it to the center of the box, and a player tried to hit it in from there? Was it a play where they came right up the middle, they punched it to the outside, and then crossed it back in? Those types of things. So you can, as you diagram those scoring plays, you can describe them more carefully. So now as you're conducting your interviews, ask the players to describe some of those key plays or key moments in the games when that player knew he was going to get a breakaway and took a great pass from a teammate. The goalkeeper, how she was able to spot the ball, and how her defense was helping her out so she could make great stops on the back end. Ask the players to explain their emotions about key plays. If it's a one that went against them, what were their thoughts? Were they upset with the officiating? Were they upset with themselves? So ask them to talk about that. They can also provide a perspective about a lot of things like the play of the opposition. Was the other team very aggressive? Did they play with a lot of speed? Did they play with a lot of control? So get that outside perspective. Obviously, your coach is going to offer you a broader perspective because they're going to have the game plan and the strategies, but that's somebody you're going to obviously want to talk to. And then find the go-to players who are going to offer the good quotes. They may not be the central player or the key player, but oftentimes the striker is not the most well-spoken, and you're not going to get a great interview out of them. The defensive player might do a better job of describing the game for you. So find who those people are and make those your go-tos. And then here are some tips on how to write it. Obviously in soccer you're not going to do a lot with play-by-play because we don't want to see that one person pass to another person pass to another person pass. That's going to get very, very boring. You're going to focus on the goals that were made. You're going to focus on some key plays in the game. It might be that a key player got injured and the game changed. You're going to talk a lot about the pacing of the game. You want to talk about the game significance, what this means in the national standings, or if a team's on a certain streak, things like that. And then note some of the key saves by the goalkeeper, some of the great plays that they made. Okay? The biggest thing I could tell you right now is to go look up some stories about soccer. Soccer is a quickly growing sport. It's the most popular sport in the world. In the U.S., it's becoming more popular, especially as we see some of the other major sports take some hits publicly for some of the issues they've been having. So start reading some more about soccer. It's worded differently. There's a different language that goes to it. But if you can write about soccer and report on soccer, that's going to be a skill set not many people have, and it's going to make you much more marketable as a sports reporter.